yet out, so we don't quite yet know what exactly the role EBA is going to play under this new framework. But it is very clear that there needs to be something at the European level to allow authorities to manage institutions in crisis at a European level, in case there are institutions operating at the European level. The EBA does also have a relatively modest role in consumer protection, and the reason I'm saying relatively modest is because of resources. We have to be realistic of what we can achieve in consumer protection at the European level with the resources we have. We do have a mandate, and we will look at issues that are in significance European, and we will try to do something good in consumer protection. It was a last-minute addition to the legislation on the EBA. Main objectives, I will talk about that. The main objectives will be that we will develop binding technical standards based on the higher level legislation issued by the European Union. So when CRD4 is going to be adopted, we will be obliged to write pieces of legislation that are called binding technical standards or implementing technical standards that will be, and this is important, these pieces of legislations will be applicable directly to all countries in Europe. So whatever comes out of the EBA's drafting table endorsed by the Commission will be directly applicable European regulations in the European Union. Of course, if you have questions on how this is going to happen, I will be able to give you the process and the details. Of course, this will involve national supervisors to a great extent. Just to give you a magnitude and idea, we are estimating that we would be issuing about 150 pieces of regulations in the next 2.5 years, only on banking, which will become enforceable and observable by European financial institutions. Now, just logistically imagine that with a team of our size, without the involvement of the expertise and resources of national supervisors, it would be impossible. So therefore, there is a structure in place which will make the involvement of national supervisors very, very strong. We will have to, we have got tools to promote the supervisory culture across the European landscape. We have got a very strong role in monitoring and taking part in colleges, in international banks, colleges. We do European-wide risk assessment. One example of that was the stress test, but we will do continuous risk monitoring and assessment of risks on an ongoing basis. The European stress test, I think it's a well-publicized exercise. It was involving Irish banks as well, and it was well published in Ireland. So I don't want to go into details in this introductory remark. We will have a role of reacting to risk warnings that are coming from the ESRB. So if the ESRB provides some sort of a warning that has got implications on the microprudential supervision of individual institutions, then we will follow up on these warnings, and we will contact national authorities and take the necessary steps to address these warnings. We will have powers to handle emergency situations. I must say that this is untested water. We have not done that. We have not had an emergency situation declared yet, but we have got. We might have at some point in time. There was a long discussion on what an emergency situation is. The conclusion in the regulation is that such an emergency situation needs to be declared by the European Council. So its heads of states will declare an emergency situation under which we would have increased powers to act even on individual institutions, which we normally don't have. In consumer protection, we will have a role to monitor developments in the markets, identify trends that can be risky from a consumer perspective, and in extreme situations, again, we even have the power to stop the distribution of certain products in the European market, but that's an extreme situation. I must say that we have already had the first question coming from the political side of what the first candidate of a product is that we want to stop being distributed in Europe. And unfortunately, we don't have that yet. So it will take time until we reach to that stage in our operations. I've got a few slides, and of course I will leave this with you later on. But that was the most important. I think that was the most important slide. I think I've explained the single rulebook concept, which is a marked change from the old way of regulating financial sector in Europe. Only for Basel III implementation, we are expecting to issue more than 40 standards very, very soon. We are trying to gear up for this. The process of creating these standards will be such that under the EBA's umbrella, there will be working groups for each and every technical standards involving the experts from the EBA and involving the experts of national authorities, which in Ireland's case, it's the National Bank of the Central Bank of Ireland. And these working groups will be doing the drafting, and then this drafting will go to an approval process within the EBA. As you know, the main governing body of the EBA is the Board of Supervisors, which is a 27-member body comprising the heads of banking supervision in the 27-member countries. So there will be member state control on what is being approved and adopted. And then once it's finalized, it goes to public consultation and impact assessment, which will all be transparent and public. And finally, when the final draft is ready, then the European Commission is supposed to endorse it under its delegated powers. And once it's endorsed, it will become directly applicable to the European market. So it's a very heavy process. And we have to do it for every single regulation which will be issued under this process. I mentioned the oversight function of the EBA. We have touched upon all these elements. We will go to colleges. We will do continuous risk assessment. We will develop risk dashboards, which will be communicated to the national authorities. And we will do stress testing. I do get the question very frequently from the media, how often we do the stress test. It is not in our regulation. It is not defined in our regulation. It just says we are supposed to do regular stress testing exercises. And there is no decision on the next one yet, but it is reasonable to expect that we will do one probably every year. Again, it's not written, it's not carved in stone. One area I want to touch upon is the colleges. The experience we had under the predecessor organization, under SEPS, which was a member organization of national supervisors, was when SEPS sent visitors or observers to the colleges of international banks, was that the quality and the way of operation of these colleges were quite different. So not only rules were different, but the way international banks were supervised were different. I can also say that what we experienced in the crisis, that colleges that are the forum for supervising internationally active banks, they had a very smooth operation when business was good. But when crisis came, their functioning worsened. The quality of functioning was going down, and the reason was because there was the confidence between national supervisors in sharing information and sharing decisions and sharing risk assessments across groups that were operating across the borders collapsed when the crisis came. So I could say that there is a lot to do with respect to colleges of supervisors to ensure that the way they function, the way they perform their duty of looking at international banks with the involvement of many national supervisors in some cases should be standardized And protocols should be established, and these protocols should be maintained even in the case of a crisis. And there should be a discussion between the supervisors on the risks and the business of the respective financial institutions. We did experience similar differences in the course of the stress test of this year, for example, when we looked at how home country supervisors communicated the stress test results to the host country supervisors in the colleges prior to publication. We did see some very good examples where full information sharing was in place, and we did see some, let's say, less encouraging examples where information was not that readily shared with the community of supervisors involved in the supervision of one or two particular groups. So where we want to go a lot deeper is to ensure that this is the way this is happening is more harmonized, is more standardized, and the appropriate protocols are developed and they are respected. We, of course, have to stress that according to the current rules, according to the current legislation, the supervision of individual financial institutions remained with the national authorities. So the EBA is not conducting direct supervision of individual financial institutions at this stage, but we have a mandate to ensure that the way these individual institutions are supervised on an international basis is harmonized and it's uniform. And we will do that through the colleges. And it's given that there are more than 100 colleges in Europe, you can imagine what sort of task we have only to send one person to every college meeting, to every single college. That's already something of a resource-intensive job. I will not go into the details. I think of the